I'd like to welcome you back to Trinity's Emerald Triangle. In the episode today, I'd like to talk to you about all the preparations we always had to make before we could go pick up the load out in NorCal. When we would get the call to go out to Cali, the first thing we had to do was make a reservation for a rental car. We didn't buy a car and just use that to go pick up the load over and over. Instead, we tried to drive a separate rental car out for each trip. Utah and Nevada State Patrols and their cooperating DEA buddies love to sit out on the hills just off of I-80 in their squad cars, eating Cheetos while they watch the passers-by with their binoculars and collect data. One cop watches the data that comes up on the electronic sensors, which inform him of the car registration, the car owner's name, and the record of how many times that car has passed by on 180. The other guy, who's probably eating most of the Cheetos, is watching the data on his laptop that is coming in on a $500,000 suitcase-sized machine that imitates a cell tower. This little fake cell tower machine enables the cops to listen in on every phone conversation going on out on the interstate. The technology that these cops use is called Stingray. Stingray is a little machine that was developed during the early 2000s for the War on Terror to be able to track the terrorists who used cell phones while they were hiding out in the Afghanistan mountains. It enables undetected military personnel to eavesdrop on unsuspecting communications. Since that war, this military technology has filtered very quickly over to the federal side of things. The feds have financed and given the Stingray technology to tens of thousands law enforcement groups to use as they see fit. It's amazing how well law enforcement has kept this technology hidden. It's also astonishing at the power of this technology. Stingray picks up everything, all the data off of a cell phone, texts, cells, contacts, photos, especially the photos for the boyfriend, emails, credit card numbers, passwords, etc. Whatever's on your phone. I'm not going to go much into detail for now because it's such a massive program, and I'm planning to devote a whole episode to the subject matter later. Again, if you didn't catch that name, it's called Stingray. If you can't wait for me to produce an episode, go look it up online for yourself, but be prepared to be completely horrified. An issue that came up on renting a car every week or several times a month was the familiarity that the employees had with us at the Salt Lake rental companies. What do you tell the employees about why we were renting so many cars over and over? Got a lot of sights to see? My wife hates flying? I mean, we rented so many cars from different agencies that all of them knew us by our first name. What we actually told them was as close to the truth as we could get. We told them we were paralawyers, paralegals, who had to carry tens of 20 big boxes full of legal cases in the back as we went to Colorado and Arizona to work with our clients. Telling them that we were going to Colorado and Arizona was the same mileage as going out to NorCal, up to Portland, and back. We had to explain to the rental companies the high mileage we put on every rental, between 1,500 and 1,800 miles per trip. We figured out that the distance from Salt Lake to Denver, then down to Phoenix, and back up to Salt Lake equals the same distance from the triangle of Salt Lake out to NorCal, then up north to Portland, and then back down to Salt Lake. This was actually very relevant information for us because when we signed the SUV rental agreements, those nosy butts always wanted to know where we were taking their car. Yes, I'm going to be taking this car out to pick up weed in NorCal. You don't mind, do you? You're definitely a weed courier if you put 4,800 miles on a rental car in 2 weeks. That's if you use the same rental car. Sometimes we would, if we had back-to-back trips, we would use the same car. And boy, I'll tell you, those miles added up. Sometimes, depending on the time of year, rental agencies all over town would only have 1 or 2 pathetic cars to pick from. We were forced to take whatever we could get. It was especially bad in August, when the rental agencies turn in almost all their cars back to the parent company while they wait for the new models in September to come out. It kind of left us in a 6 to 5 week void there. Another killer season for trying to get rental cars was at the end of January in Salt Lake City for the Park City Sundance Film Festival. Park City is only 45 minutes away from the Salt Lake Airport. Oh boy, and the cost of renting a 4-wheel drive quadrupled at least. We were often left with sedans that weren't 4-wheel drives. It was very important for us to have 4-wheel drive in the winter time. Driving the load over Pendleton's Pass in Oregon and on I-84, driving with snow and ice conditions through Idaho, was really harsh in the winter. Like I said, we didn't always have a choice as to what we got to drive. Occasionally, I also had some really personal psychological problems hauling weed in cars like Dodge Intrepids, Chevy Impalas, and Crown Victorias. These were by far the worst cars we were forced to drive. It made my heart palpitate and gave me anxiety attacks to have to drive product in cop cars. It's interesting, those cars could hardly hold any weight in the trunk. They could only hold, even a huge boat like a Crown Victoria could only hold 80 pounds in the trunk. In case you couldn't tell, I'm not particularly fond of cops, and I really hate their cars even more. The biggest conundrum with renting cars every trip was, to be able to rent the cars, the companies required credit cards. That leaves a huge digital footprint. You have to give them your license too. In the end, this was a large part of their evidence in our discovery after they busted us. But what are you gonna do? Let the cops see you driving west on I-80 in the same truck but never coming back week after week? I think if we had done that, the cops would have nabbed us a lot sooner than they did. I swear, I saw more arrests and yard sales out on I-80 than you could shake a stick at. While we were dealing with making reservations, we also had to wait on the distributor to make collections. The distributor would go around to each hopper and tell them that if they wanted any more product, they had to square up with him. It usually took anywhere from 3 to 5 days to get all the little hoppers and their deadbeat counterparts to pay us. Once the money was collected, we would pack a backpack to deliver to the brokers. These backpacks usually held at least $150,000, sometimes all the way up to $250,000 to $300,000. But before we put the money in the backpack, the money had to be sorted and counted. Have you ever counted that much money before at once? Often, Bob and I were the designated counters. And let me tell you, while it's an extraordinary job, it's also a tedious, dirty one. Money is filthy, absolutely filthy. By the time we finished, it took about 2 hours or more. Our hands would be brown. It was pretty gross. Sometimes counting took even longer because lazy, slipshod hoppers handed their bills to us in messy folds and wads. That used to make me so angry. Man, I would cuss like a sailor about those turds. One day, we ended up counting over $700 extra from one of these sloppy hoppers. I had to uncrumple one by one hundreds of $5 and $10 bills and put them in neat stacks before we could put it in the money counter. What a sloth. That particular hopper used to set my counting back almost 2 extra hours. If I had been the kingpin, I would have said, "Off with his head." My very most favorite hopper was the OCD kid. Before turning his money over to us, he would put his bills in a pillowcase in the dryer with 4 sheets of bounce. He literally laundered that money. Then, I kid you not, he ironed. He ironed the bills to make them crisp and stiff, and he shuffled and sorted them all out to make sure the bills were all going the same way with the heads up in the exact same direction. Bless his ever-living heart. I loved getting that hopper's payments. And he was never short or over, ever, not once. Now, there's a person that Jesus is going to let through the pearly gates. Oh, how do you count that much money as we had to count? Like I just mentioned before, with a money counter, of course. I think that Trey and Colin bought those counters in Las Vegas and paid straight up cash for about, they cost about $400 a piece. We heard that sometimes online cops look for individuals who are buying just a few counters at a time and investigate what those individuals are up to. Another form of digital footprints. So they went down to Vegas to pick them up in person. We used buckets and buckets of Sally's black rubber bands to secure each stack of money. Sorting and counting that much money is actually pretty grueling. While the money counter was whirring away, we listened to loud music so that no one could hear the noise of the counter in the next apartment over of our safe house. We never kept the money at our personal residence. Like all good drug dealers, we counted and stored the money at a safe house. By the time it was all collected and counted, we took anywhere from, like I said before, $150,000 to $250,000 packed, stacked, and counted into $5,000 bricks. Have you ever seen that much cash in one place? Seeing that much money stacked in tall pillars of bricks changes you as a person. It feels really powerful to handle that kind of money all in one place. It's a mind-blowing experience. It never got old looking at that much money. You may be wondering, what kept us from running away down to Mexico with the money? Don't think we didn't think of that many times. But Traby was on the other end waiting for us to bring him his brokering money. Next came packing. For a 3 to 5 day trip to NorCal and back, one of my biggest problems, which would never occur to a normal traveler, was keeping our personal luggage down to only one backpack. Because while we only took out 5 deflated cargo bags after the buy, the boys would fill each one of those huge bags with 20 1-pound airtight packed bags of weed to bring back. To understand how big a 20-pound waterproof cargo bag is, imagine it being full of 15 basketballs or 30 soccer balls. 5 huge canvas bags like that pretty much takes up all the room in the car, and many times we almost didn't even fit the last bag in, which is why there was never enough room for much of anything else on the way home but a driver, a passenger, a backpack, and the load, the most important thing. If you're a woman, could you do with only a backpack for a 3 to 4 day trip? Could your girlfriends? Are you kidding me? Man, it just about killed me. Where am I supposed to put my sun hat, my makeup, my toiletries, my jewelry, my clean underwear, a change of clothes every day, and a pair of shoes to match each outfit? What in the Sam Hill did they expect me to do? Just wear the same clothes on my back day after day? Often we were delayed an extra day or two, and then I was really gonna stink, almost as bad as those feral boys on the farm. Do I look like a stinky hippie kind of girl to you? Well, That's kind of what I became. Lastly, we often had to stay up till 2 in the morning waiting to receive the 5 waterproof rags and the money drop off from the distributor the morning before we left. On top of that, we had to wipe the insides of the plastic canvas bags down with bleached towels to try to clean the odor away from the inside of the bags. Even though the weed was in bags and you put it in the bags, the weed is so pungent it still makes the inside of the bag stink. I hated that particular chore. I just really hated that chore. Sometimes all we had was a 4 to 12 hour break to get back out on the road. During that short window of time, we had to frantically renew the rental car, get our utilities and other bills paid, deposit money in the bank accounts, cancel appointments with the dentist, wash clothes, count the money, pack up again, gas up, and rework social schedules. It was really hard at times to have a social life, and we couldn't even think about ever having pets. I love pets, but you just can't abandon them for that long a time. The poor little doggles and kitties would have been raising themselves. I remember even doing a couple of 3 back-to-back trips several times. That was killer. We love making the money though, and it was too good to pass up. This was the routine we went through before every trip, and that's about all the time we have for tonight. So remember, stay out of trouble. And make sure you delete those naughty pictures of yourself or your girlfriend on your cell phones before you take it on a trip out on Interstate 80. And don't do anything I would do. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.